Are you going to fight me? Are you going to kick my head in?
Can you go, please?
In everyday neighbourhoods across the country,
Come on, the neighbour.
people are out of control.
Come down there smashing at it. Call the police now.
Friendly communities are being destroyed by the nightmare neighbour next door. Tonight, a long-running dispute ends in extreme violence.
So much blood everywhere. He just came down here with the sole intention of doing as much damage as he possibly could to me. That's exactly what he done.
Deadly threats across the garden fence.
I could hear him shouting, I'm going to petrol bomb you, I'm going to petrol bomb your missus, I'm going to petrol bomb your kids, I'm going to petrol bomb her next door, I'm going to kill you all.
And a group of travellers kick up a real stink.
It smelt like a sewage farm. You couldn't go in and out the house without smelling it.
Even the most peaceful communities can become a living hell. In 2010, 55-year-old oil rig technician Brian Johnston and his family moved into their new house in a sought-after part of Falkirk. With glorious views across the Forth Valley, they thought it would be their dream home.
We found this house, we thought, ideal, off the beaten track, private, shared access lane. We thought, great. Unfortunately, it hasn't turned out that way.
Brian's immediate neighbour is Jim Keir, a 59-year-old joiner.
The guy who sold us the house said to us, one thing I must point out to you, be careful of Keir, you'll have to watch him. Just be careful, he says, because there's a lot of movement up here, delivery lorries to take away what he's built, and that was pretty transparent. When we eventually got the keys of our house, we could see this happening for ourselves, you know.
Jim Keir is well known throughout the area. His house is a local landmark, a 26-room mansion that's been a real labour of love.
It's a self-built project that I've been working on in my spare time for the last 20 years. I've literally did everything in it. I've made the windows, made the doors, done the roof tiling, done the plumbing. I've called it Brigadoon. I've got a partly constructed 16-metre long swimming pool, a cinema, have a snooker lounge, have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom kind of senior citizen disabled flat within it.
Who's going to live in that?
By the time I get finished, probably me.
Brian and Jim would be sharing an access lane leading to their properties. So it wasn't long before they met for the first time.
We soon got to know who Jim Keir was, in no uncertain terms. He had marked out the boundaries at the front of the house with yellow paint, and he pointed out, this is yours, this is mine, this is shared, you will not be moving over this line, this is mine. He was already laying down the law.
But the volume of traffic delivering materials for Jim's ongoing building work soon became a sticking point for Brian.
When I first bought the house, it was described to me by Jim Keir as a great big turning bay. There are the times people come up, visitors to him, and they still come onto our property unannounced. But it's just an invasion of our privacy, and it's just making a mockery of our property. In fact, I've had to install CCTV to cover the events that are happening out there.
But Jim says that he's done everything possible to stop visitors using Brian's property as a turning bay.
Everybody that comes up here, I tell them not to turn in his drive, because there's plenty of room to turn in mine.
For 6 months, Brian gritted his teeth and put up with the vehicles that continued to arrive at Jim's house. But his patience snapped after his wife Lorraine found her access blocked by yet another delivery lorry.
My wife got out and asked Jim Keir, what's happening here? She said, I can't even go into my property. So subsequently my wife had to get in the car, reversed all the way down, and unfortunately she caught this with the rear of the car, and it resulted in about £2,000 worth of damage. We wrote a letter to Jim Keir, because he'd caused it, was to give us the excess on our insurance. He wrote back a cheeky worded letter saying that he wasn't driving the car. It's my wife.
Jim felt that the responsibility for the damage was nothing to do with him.
I mean, anybody that can reverse shoot through a gate that's twice the width of a car, I mean, what's that to do with me? I mean, how do you get a driving licence if you can't reverse shoot through a gate that's wider than 12 feet?
Angered by Jim's refusal to contribute to the cost of the damage, Brian took matters into his own hands. He decided to prevent Jim from using his property as a turning bay by marking out his territory.
I thought, right, I'm going to have to put some kind of deterrent in here. So I started digging post holes for to put a fence up. So I started to dig the hole, and Mr. Keir appeared out his gate with a pick.
He was putting that fence post in there, and he must have been at the one hole for about an hour. I said, "Do you want a loan of a pick, Brian?" He says, "I want all off at you."
I says, "Look, you can keep your pick. You know why I'm digging the hole. This is for to keep you off my property." I said, "We've already had my car severely damaged, and I'm having no more of it." At that, he just back into his gate, disappeared with his pick.
That was the end of it. That's the only time I have ever approached that man in 6 years. This is a really friendly village. We've just got one hostile family.
With the battle lines drawn, violence was about to erupt on the driveway.
He got me in a headlock, he started crunching his knuckles into my face, and then he scraped my head along this very rough wall.
Doesn't care who he picks on, he'll pick on anybody.
Coming up, a noisy neighbour gets nasty.
She opened the door and I heard Simon go, "Is that slag from next door again?" It just slammed the door in my face.
And a group of travellers leave an almighty mess.
There was feces everywhere, like, oh, human feces. Disgusting.
Mansfield Woodhouse, a village in Nottinghamshire which has stood since Roman times. But the peace of 2,000 years would be shattered when new neighbours moved onto one of its quiet terrace streets.
Literally all you heard constantly is boom, 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 boom. And he went, "I'm going to have you, I'm going to kill you all."
Dee Pease-Davis is a 26-year-old marketing executive from Leicester. In January 2016, she landed her dream job.
It is very, very stressful, but I absolutely adore it. It takes a lot of my time off, but it is really, really good fun.
Dee needed to move closer to her new office. Fortunately, a friend had a room spare in his house in the nearby village of Mansfield Woodhouse. Dee moved in and immediately felt at home.
This street's actually really nice because everyone's dead friendly. And you see like all the little old neighbours, they're like, "Oh, good morning, you alright?" So I thought, jackpot, nice street, probably get on with a lot of people.
Happily settled, Dee was delighted to meet her new next-door neighbour, 38-year-old Kelly Wagstaff.
Kelly came out of her house, she introduced herself, just said, "Oh, are you moving in?" Just kind of like nice little meet and greet sort of thing. She seemed actually alright. I thought I had an alright neighbour, so I thought pretty cool.
But before long, Dee started to notice the noise from next door. In fact, she couldn't escape it.
The music I can hear in all rooms. You can hear it in the living room, you can hear it in the kitchen, you can hear it from my bedroom, you can hear it from my housemate's bedroom.
Dee felt Kelly was playing the music too loud and too late. And one night, driven to distraction, she decided to have a word.
So I just went to the front door and just knocked on the door and said, "Look, Kelly, could you mind turning it down? I want to go to bed now. It's getting a bit late." "Oh, yeah, babe, no problem. Sorry about that. I didn't even realise." I went, "Oh, it's all right, chicken. Don't worry about it. I know you like music, but just need to go to bed. I'm knackered." And shut the door friendly, and that was it.
But Dee's neighbourly chat with Kelly about the noise didn't put an end to the loud music. She claims the music's disruption became even worse.
It started getting louder and louder and louder. People have parties and whatever, you know, you get that. But then it was consistently from the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning till getting to 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. On and off, half an hour burst, but at night time it was a constant.
But it wasn't just music which disturbed Dee. When Kelly's boyfriend, 29-year-old Simon Sharp, came to visit, The noise levels went through the roof.
I started hearing the arguments between them. He started off just shouting at each other, then he'd storm off. But as time's progressed, it started loud musical shouting. It disrupted my sleep. It's disrupting my life at this point because you're waiting for that music. I am fed up, I'm tired, and I'm pissed off. I just wanted to stop.
After weeks of putting up with the noise from next door, Dee's patience finally ran out late one night. She went to confront Kelly about the loud music.
And I got to the door and I could hear the music and I could hear two people talking inside, so I just knocked on the door, just like shaping the door, and I heard Simon go, "That's like from next door again, complaining about us." And then I just went, "Kelly, could you please turn the music down? I've got work in the morning, please turn it down." She got for sake, and just slammed the door in my face. So I kind of like took a step back and was like, "Whoa, what's gone off here?" And then just walked back into my house because I just like got shocked by it, to be honest with you. And then just tried to get back to sleep, but the music was still going.
But Dee was about to find out that there were far more frightening problems just around the corner.
Rang the police saying, "Can you please help me? He's trying to get in the house, he's threatening to kill me. Please help me."
It's many people's worst nightmare. A group of new arrivals turn up unannounced, changing the landscape and the mood of a whole community.
They are already here for 1 week, and we don't know when they're going to move from here.
In Bradford, the residents of this friendly neighbourhood got a rude awakening when, without warning, a group of travellers moved in.
Their wagon's door is open, that's why they're playing a music very loud. So it's coming through there.
66-year-old Sudesh Bardvaj moved into this once peaceful street almost 40 years ago and happily brought up her young family here.
It was a very good area before. Sometime I forgot my keys outside in the door, but no problem at all. Nobody came in and never trouble.
The peace of the neighbourhood was shattered when the car park that backs onto Sudesh's garden was invaded by travellers.
Is it always this loud?
It is loud. Sometimes it's very loud. When you open the window, you can hear very clearly. Daytime, they always play in the ground and making all sorts of the noise.
The community had already had one brief visit from the travellers just before Christmas and breathed a sigh of relief when they left. But the sense of relief didn't last long.
There was only 2 caravans. I think they just came to have a look at the ground and then gone back. But lo and behold, they decided to turn up on the 7th of January with 7 caravans.
Fearful of the travellers' impact on the community, local business owner Rihanna Bisharat confronted them in desperation.
I literally ran out and said to them, "This is private land." And she said, "Tough love. Call the police if you need to."
The car park where the travellers set up camp belongs to the local social club. Because the land is privately owned, police are unable to act. Without help from the authorities, the neighbours were left to clean up the mess. Quite literally.
One evening, we were going to have a housewarming, just a blessing party with the family, so we thought we'd come in and clean it up. Parked my car there, and then I walked towards here, and then my husband was stood there, and I looked here, and there was feces everywhere, like, 14 to 15, like, patches of feces, and I just stood here, and I said to my husband, "Oh my God, they must have loads of dogs." And my husband said to me, it's not dogs, it's humans. And it was absolutely disgusting.
We asked the travellers for their side of the story, but they didn't want to participate in the programme. But Rihanna claims that the social club's CCTV footage confirms their suspicions.
He's seen this young boy jump out of the caravan and come to the corner of our entrance and doing his business, using our place as their public toilet. Oh God, we don't need this.
Rihanna says she was told by the council that as the mess was on private property, she would have to clear it up herself.
You do get upset. It's just when you work for something so much and somebody comes and spoils, and it is really upsetting.
The mess was upsetting enough, but the locals were about to find themselves dealing with something altogether more intimidating.
I was having a shower. It's next door is a shower next to the kitchen. And my husband was shouting. I thought he's saying something to me. I said, why are you shouting? You already know I'm in the shower. He said, no, I wasn't shouting you. One boy was coming through this window inside.
Sudesh's husband had caught one of the traveller children attempting to break in.
My husband saw him. He was shouting, what's you doing here? What are you doing here? So then he saw him. He jumped back and he gone and jumped at a wall.
Since the attempted break-in, Sudesh and her family have been living in fear.
It is scary. When somebody come inside, they can do anything because we live in alone here, me and my husband, and they can attack to us. There might be something happen anytime. We don't know.
Back in Falkirk, tensions were also running high. Neighbours Brian Johnston and Jim Keir had been squabbling about the use of a shared driveway between their properties.
People come up, visitors to them, and they still come onto our property unannounced. But it's just an invasion of their privacy, and it's just making a mockery of our property.
This is a really friendly village. We've just got one hostile family.
Brian had already cracked down on Jim using his driveway as a turning bay. Trouble flared up again when, as a favour, Jim gave permission to another neighbour to park a caravan on his driveway.
My neighbour at the front, he brings his caravan in through my drive.
The problem was that Jim hadn't consulted Brian. Feeling provoked by the unauthorised use of the drive, he was determined to block the path of the caravan.
I got in my van, I drove it very, very slowly. I got very close to him, so I parked my van to prevent the caravan moving. I thought, you are not going anywhere with that caravan until the police arrive.
With neither side prepared to give an inch, tensions began to escalate.
One of the people who arrived from round the back, he was walking up and down my property like this, complete stranger. I can only assume it was a scaffolding pole, brandishing it on his shoulder. At one point he said, do you want some of this? And I said, don't even think about it, the police are on their way.
What Mr. Johnson's saying is complete lies. That man never said anything aggressive.
The police arrived and defused the situation, but the access issue was becoming a ticking time bomb. In July 2013, some routine maintenance on the hedges on the driveway caused the neighbours to square up to each other again.
When I cut this side, we dispose of the hedge cuttings. When Mr. Johnson cuts them, he dumps them on my property.
As it's a shared driveway, both men are responsible for keeping the hedges in trim. But Brian felt frustrated that Jim, up to his eyeballs with work on his own property, wasn't pulling his weight.
A couple of occasions I've actually left 4 bags of cuttings with the intention of saying, Jim, this is your cuttings as well as it's mine. You know, left them for Jim Keir to dispose of.
Brian was trying to prove a point by putting the bags on Jim's side of the driveway, but Jim didn't appreciate the gesture.
On one occasion, the 4 bags that were here, he starts launching into them, kicking them up and down the lane, making a right mess, destroyed the bags.
Jim has another explanation for the turn of events.
For the first month the bags were there, then eventually they had been blown over and they were slightly further down the lane. I literally just kicked them.
A few weeks later, when Brian left more bags of leaves on Jim's side of the driveway, it was like a red rag to a bull.
He came over here, where my brown bin was sitting, full of cuttings. He was slashing the bags as he walked. Got it down, you can see him slashing it on the ground just to make a good job of it. and just throwing the leaves on the floor, and retreated into his own gate and away into his house. I did contact the police. To me, that was a criminal act.
Although the bags were all burst and had heads cut and sticking through them, when the police came and charged me, they said that he valued these second-hand ripped compost bags at £2 each.
Despite the small cost of the damage, Jim was charged with vandalism and fined. He found it hard to believe that the police had responded to Brian's complaint in the first place.
Everybody seems to think there's some kind of conspiracy here, and that the Johnsons have somebody either in the police department or in the fiscal's office. Personally, I find that hard to believe, but it's uncanny how, whenever they snap their fingers, the police are here. They certainly didn't respond to me when I snapped my fingers.
The neighbours were both nursing grievances. Brian felt that Jim was abusing the use of the driveway. Jim felt that Brian was being petty. After months of simmering tensions, matters came to a head in a violent conflict at the bottom of the drive.
I brought my wheelie bin down. In the time that it took me to turn my bin and face it into the wall, Jim Keir had run across the road, and as I turned round, it was there, and I just felt this whack to my head.
But Jim has a very different version of how the events unfolded.
I was walking down the lane to go home, and Mr. Johnson chased me down the lane. He then accosted me, swore at me. Every step he took, he was closing in on me. He was chasing me.
My head went down. I was obviously dazed. He got me in a headlock. He got me over to the wall. He started crunching his knuckles into my face, and then he scraped my head along this very rough wall.
Drag his head up and down the wall. There was a scuffle. You seen Enter the Dragon? He was actually making noises like Bruce Lee, and he was trying to bamboozle me with these exotic hand movements.
That's when he started raining in the punches and the kicks.
He's throwing punches and kicks at me, and I'm responding, eh?
Only at the point where I said, "Are you trying to kill me, Keir?" that he let go and stopped it.
He picked the time, the place, and he picked the outcome. He didn't get the outcome he wanted, but what are you going to do? Again, it was self-defence.
The incident was reported to the police, but without enough evidence, even they couldn't decide who was telling the truth. Both Jim and Brian were given a 2-year warning to keep out of trouble. It left neither side satisfied with the outcome.
It's just bullying. Doesn't care who he picks on, he'll pick on anybody.
Just shows the pure mentality of the man. He just wants to do damage. He's a law unto himself, always has been, and as far as I'm concerned, always will be.
But this fight was to prove to be just the tip of the iceberg. Blood is spilt as the Battle of the Driveway becomes open warfare.
He gets me down, there's raining blows on me, he kicks me on the head.
He wasn't trying to give me a black eye, he was trying to take my eyes out.
Coming up, in Nottinghamshire, Dee fears for her life as she comes under siege.
He's screaming, "I'm going to kill her, I'm going to get her head off." Gosh, now going to break her legs. He was trying to get in the door.
And in Bradford, the travellers resort to dirty tactics.
One of them came from over the wall down here with a carrier bag full of human excrement.
In the Nottinghamshire village of Mansfield Woodhouse, Dee Davis had clashed with her next-door neighbours, Kelly Wagstaff and her partner Simon Sharp, about loud music in February 2016.
She opened the door and I heard Simon go, "That's like from next door again, complaining about the music." And then I just went, "Kelly, can you please turn the music down? I've got work in the morning, please turn it down." She just slammed the door in my face.
Dee says she complained to Kelly 4 times, but the music got worse over the following weeks.
It is literally constant boom, 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 over and over and over again. We'd have an island in the middle of the kitchen and the mug's vibrating because of the bass on it. It was getting that loud, you just can't concentrate on anything. You're sitting on tenterhooks the whole bloody time, waiting for the same CD to go on and on and on and on and on again.
We put these allegations to Kelly Wagstaff. She denies she could even play music loudly.
The only stereo I contain in my house is a little pig thing. It can play loud if you tried it. It's got no bass to it. It's a little kid stereo. It's like, really? And that's the only stereo I've got.
But Dee insisted the music was destroying her life and recorded it on her mobile.
The 8th. It still continues. This is 3 hours in. It is now 10 to 8 at night. It's outside my bedroom window. It's that sort of loudness, and it's just in the background niggling at you constantly. You just get so pissed off with it because I just want to be able to relax, and you can't relax, and it just drove me nuts because it was all day, every day, constant. Still going strong.
After complaining to Kelly so many times, but with no effect, Dee felt she was running out of options and was at the end of her tether.
It got really repetitive and I just had enough. I was blowing my top. We couldn't relax in the house. It didn't feel like home anymore. And we're like, we're not having this. This isn't fair. So I called the police.
But rather than solving the problem, Dee's call would only inflame the situation, as Kelly was quick to guess who had called the police.
So I was sat in the corner near my back door over there. I heard the music and Kelly and Simon outside. And she came out the gate and stood at the end of my garden. It was you that called the police, wasn't it? You silly slag. Just admit it, you want it.
And Dee claims it wasn't only Kelly who started abusing her.
Simon's on the other side of the garden going, you slag, I'm going to have you. We've got plans for you, your car, your mother, your mate. We've got plans for you, don't you worry. I was like, whoa, just leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. I'm not, like, get off my property or I'm calling the police. And she just didn't. She just carried on and carried on and carried on.
Over the next few months, the police were frequent visitors, as the noise and abuse from next door continued. But Kelly claims that neither she nor Simon did anything wrong, and that they are the victims.
We've had that many malicious phone calls. The police were coming out ridiculously all the time, and not once have I been charged with anything or cautioned with anything.
And Kelly has a theory about why Dee had a problem with her and Simon.
Since these neighbours have moved in on the street, it's been nothing but problems. It's a very close community. Everybody gets on, everybody knows everybody. You know, these people, they're not from Woodhouse.
But one weekend in May 2016, the hostility reached new extremes.
My friend from Leicester had come up just to come and have a girly weekend with me. My housemate was sat with us and we decided just to watch a horror movie together.
Dee had heard banging noises from next door earlier in the evening. Now it seemed the sound of her TV had sent Simon over the edge.
It was about 11:30 at night. We heard the front door go and he's screaming on the street, Simon. Screaming, I'm going to kill her, I'm going to get her head off. That's when he went like, gosh, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to have her. Then he slammed the door down, which I can understand is in anger, but then he was trying to get in, going, I'm going to kill her. And was trying to get in the house. There was no mistaking it.
Dee and her friends ran upstairs to escape Simon.
We all just ran into the housemate's room, literally terrified. I'd started to, like, cry. My mate is just absolutely in tatters. She's come up for a quiet weekend. I just was dialing 999. So I was sat on the end of the bed saying, can you please help me? He's trying to get in the house. He's threatening to kill me. Please help me.
When the police arrived 10 minutes later, Simon had already disappeared. Dee was about to find out that his behaviour would get even more intimidating.
Can you please stop it, Simon? Stop banging and punching the fence. Simon just went, you can wait, mate. I'm going to kill you all.
In Bradford, a group of travellers had created havoc for their new neighbours by setting up camp in the car park of the nearby social club.
I said, oh my God, they must have loads of dogs. And my husband said to me, it's not dogs, it's humans. Feces. And it was absolutely disgusting.
Local resident Paul Reynard has been coming to the social club for over 40 years.
There was a problem from the very start with them. They were treating it as a rubbish dump for the amount of stuff they kept throwing away.
Paul says the club's CCTV cameras show how youngsters from the group targeted the back entrance to the building.
The Travellers' children, one of them came from over the wall down here with a bottle of sour milk, 5 litres I think it was, and poured it all over the floor there. Then ran back up, came back with a carrier bag full of human excrement and threw it on top of it. It had a pole and it was roughly there and it was going like that. It smelt like, if you ever been to a sewage farm, exactly like all a piggery. That's how it smelt just here. You couldn't go in and out the house without smelling it.
After staying for 3 weeks, the travellers suddenly packed up their caravans and left unannounced, leaving the locals to clean up their mess.
This is actually decently packed up. My husband did this yesterday. All this mess was not in bags. It was on that corner over there in the entrance. So he's had to get his gloves and just clean up somebody else's mess.
But the residents aren't counting their chickens. They fear that the travellers could come back at any moment. And next time, they want to be prepared.
You've just got to fend for your own self, because nobody's going to help you. No one at all. So that's a big lesson that we have learnt.
We are having gates put up now because of these stop travellers coming back into the car park.
Gates don't come cheap, and fencing doesn't come cheap, and they've got to be good, secure ones to make sure that what we have experienced will never happen again.
In Falkirk, neighbours Brian Johnston and Jim Keir had come to blows over the use of their shared driveway.
When he threw me physically to the ground, then that's when he started raining in the punches and the kicks.
He picked the time, the place, and he picked the outcome.
After their official warnings, both men knew that one breach of the peace could land them in hot water. Despite this, in June 2013, Brian claims that while he was away on business, Jim assaulted his wife.
One morning, my wife had been down closing the gate here. Jim Keir came out of his property at the top, and as she started to walk up, he had left with his wheelbarrow with a lawnmower on top of it, with the arms of the lawnmower sticking out. The gentleman that he is, he walked straight down with his wheelbarrow, didn't go out the way to avoid my wife or do anything. He just run the wheelbarrow straight into her, hit my wife in the chest and severely bruised her.
Once again, the police were called to an incident between the two neighbours. When they visited Jim Keir, they viewed his CCTV footage.
But Mrs. Johnson was like a ninja, stalking me on the outside of the fence. You see it on the CCTV. When she thinks I'm coming out, she backs off, she stands with her arms folded and waits for me to exit. As soon as I exit, she closes the gate I'm about to go out and turns and walks straight into me. And instantly said, "That's assault," and went and phoned the police, and I was arrested for assault. But once the police viewed the CCTV, I was released and Mrs. Johnson was charged.
Brian was convinced that Jim would be charged for assault. Instead, Brian's wife Lorraine was charged with wasting police time.
Good boy.
Although the charge was later dropped, Brian was left with a deep sense of injustice.
I've got to keep going down the legal route. That's the way we prefer to go, as opposed to physically assaulting people, which Keir seems to want to do.
After 5 years of bitter disputes, the neighbours were well known to the local police. But no one could have predicted the savage turn of events that took place in May 2015. According to Brian Johnston, that night he, his wife and his daughter walked to the end of the drive to meet his daughter's boyfriend.
I'm closing the gate, as I always do. At this point, we hear Jim Keir exiting his property. I thought, oh no, here we go.
I was halfway down the lane before I was aware they were there, because it was dark, it was 10 o'clock at night. When I went for the handle of the gate, I'm trying to push it open. Every time I'm trying to push it open, Mr. Johnson's at that side pulling it shut.
I felt the gate getting jostled and pulled into me, and my wife shouts, "That's assault."
I tried to leave. They would not allow me to leave. Mr. Johnson saying, "You're a dead man." Mrs. Johnson shouting. And again, Mr. Johnson and I started scuffling.
Brian's daughter filmed the beginning of the fight on her mobile phone.
And I felt this almighty pain in my face. It was a punch or an elbow or something. He gets me down. His raining blows on me and he kicks me on the head.
I mean, I was scuffling with him for, as I say, 10 to 15 seconds. And for the next 10 minutes I was being verbally and physically abused.
He wrestles with Keir, wrestles him off me. He eventually managed to get Keir somehow round the neck. He pulls him over and they fall into this hedge backwards. Keir at this point is throwing his arms about, trying to punch his way out.
But Jim claims that he was the one being attacked.
I was being pounded before people. The young fellow was behind me, had me in a chokehold and had this arm tied up. His wife was punching me in the face. Miss Johnson was kicking me in the legs, and Mr. Johnson was digging his fingers into my eyes. I mean, he wasn't trying to give me a black eye, he was trying to take my eyes out.
My finger somehow gets near Keir's mouth and he takes the opportunity to clamp onto it with his teeth, at which point I'm shouting, my finger, let it go." You see his teeth, the white of his teeth, as he was biting at my finger.
Jim admits that he bit Brian's finger, but claims that it was only in self-defence.
I mean, the man was trying to blind me. My hands were tied up, I was being choked, punched, kicked. He put his finger into my mouth, and just like a drowning man clutching at straws, I bit it.
There's so much blood everywhere. It's all over my clothes, my trousers, my shoes. I managed to get my finger and stick it under my armpit to try and stem the flow of blood. And all this time we're shouting to my daughter, "Get the police." She says, "Dad, they're on their way."
The police arrived on the scene within minutes. Jim Keir was arrested and an ambulance was called for Brian.
I didn't know the severity to my finger at that point. It was the paramedics who, upon clearing the wound, said, "You've lost your fingertip." It just was needless. He was just a maniac on the night. He just came down here with the sole intention of doing as much damage as he possibly could to me. That's exactly what he done.
Still to come, the dust settles after the Battle of Falkirk.
At 10 o'clock at night, there's 5 people in the lane. They were obviously working to a plan.
If my dog had done that to anyone, he would have got put down. He's just getting away with murder.
And in Nottinghamshire, the net closes in on Simon Sharp.
I asked them what happened. They went, "He's been arrested for threats to kill."
In Nottinghamshire, D. Peace Davis was locked in a battle with noisy next-door neighbours, Simon Sharp and Kelly Wagstaff. Leading to threats and intimidation from Simon.
That's when he went like, "Gosh, I'm going to kill her, I'm going to have her," and was trying to get in the house. There was no mistaking it.
Dee claims that there was no let-up in the noise and hostility from next door, and that the neighbours on the other side of Kelly and Simon were having problems of their own.
I'm guessing the police had a lot of calls because they now were saying, "We're on red alert for Kelly Wagstaff's house."
It wasn't long before the police were pressed into action. In June 2016, Dee's mother was visiting her when they became aware of an argument between Simon and his neighbour on the other side.
So I just said to my mum, I said, "Mum, what's going on?" She goes, "Simon's kicking off, big time." And I could hear him shouting. But then I heard next door but one say, "Can you please stop it, Simon? Stop banging and punching the fence. You're scaring my children." Simon just went, "Scaring them? Scaring them? You can wait, mate. I'm going to petrol bomb you. I'm going to petrol bomb your missus. I'm going to petrol bomb your kids. I'm going to petrol bomb her next door. I'm going to kill you all." And that's when me and Mum just went, "Had enough of this," straight inside and called the police straight away.
With such an extreme threat, the police were on the scene immediately.
I asked them what happened. They went, "He's been arrested for threats to kill." Finally, I just went, "Oh my God, thank God they're actually taking this seriously now and they've got him." I literally was so relieved that at least he was gone.
But Kelly Wagstaff feels that many of Dee's accusations about Simon are not true.
None of them threats has ever came out his mouth. He has never knocked on their door. He has never threatened to kill anybody. He's not like that. He's not that sort of person.
In August 2016, at Mansfield Magistrates Court, Simon Sharp pleaded guilty to 2 counts of using threatening and abusive words with intent to cause fear. He was sentenced to 16 weeks in prison. Kelly is standing by her man and blames her neighbours for the problems.
Now, my partner's been sent to prison for something he hasn't done, but his solicitor said to him, if he didn't plead guilty, it would get a lot longer because of the threats that apparently his friends were made. None of it's true. And the letter's what he writes to me, and he keeps saying to me, Kelly, you know the truth, all my friends know the truth, we all know the truth.
Dee is happy it's over, but no longer feels safe in the house.
He's gone now, at least for a little while, but it's the repercussions of when he comes out. What's going to change this time?
Dee feels she can't stay in Mansfield Woodhouse any longer, and is planning on leaving the village.
I'm looking at it as a bit of a positive because I can have a bit of a fresh start, but the fact that I'm actually having to be forced to move when I have done nothing wrong at all in any word of the circumstances, it disgusts me.
In Falkirk, after 5 years of disputes between neighbours Brian Johnston and Jim Keir, in May 2015, their sparring erupted into full-blown violence in a late-night fight at the bottom of their driveway.
At 10 o'clock at night, there's 5 people in the lane. They were obviously working to our plan.
He chose to come down here, put himself into this situation and do as much physical damage to me as he could.
Both men had very different accounts of what happened that night. What wasn't in doubt was that in the skirmish, Brian Johnston had lost the tip of his finger.
The police found it and just told me basically they couldn't do anything with it. Dead. A day after the assault, I had to go to Forth Valley Hospital and get an operation to partially amputate the finger back to the bone. There's nothing worse than sitting and listening to someone crunching back your bone of your finger when you're in severe pain.
Jim was charged with assault, and Brian hoped that he would be severely dealt with. As well as the permanent loss of his fingertip, Brian had also suffered a fractured jaw and eye socket in the fight. But insult was added to injury when Jim appeared in court a few months later.
He basically said that my wife, myself, my daughter and my daughter's boyfriend had been down the lane with one aim, was to ambush Keir when he was leaving his house, which was total untruth.
Despite the 2 conflicting stories and only the grainy CCTV footage as evidence, the jury came to a unanimous decision.
I wasn't there on day 2 at the court hearing. I was relayed the message that Keir had been let off with the charges by the jury. Couldn't quite take it in, still can't take it in.
It took 15 members of the jury less than 15 minutes to find me not guilty. They judged that I had acted in self-defence.
If my dog had done that to anyone, he would have got put down. He's just getting away with murder.
Despite attempts by the police to solve the neighbours' dispute through mediation, so far it's not been possible to get both sides around the table to settle their differences.
He thinks he can push people about. Prior to him arriving, I've never seen a police officer. I just take it as it comes,
Dangerous person. If you stuck a pair of horns on him, I think that would be quite a good likeness to the devil. He is a nightmare neighbour.
Have you got a nightmare neighbour story? Get in touch at channel5.com/nightmare neighbour. Next time, noises through the wall in Merseyside.
2 or 3 times a week. Bang, bang, bang. Morning, afternoon and night.
In London, a pink paint job leaves a homeowner seeing red.
I didn't expect everybody to like it like I did, but I didn't expect anyone to be offended by it.
And doorstep threats of violence in Hampshire.
You'll be one day, mate, we'll have it out here. Really? My mum with you. Are you going to fight me? Yeah, I'll fight you. Are you going to kick my head in?
The race is on to build the world's most luxurious cruise ship, and with cabins costing up to £8,000 a night, they better get it right. That sets sail brand new tomorrow night at 9. Next on Benefits is cashing in for Christmas.
Can you go, please?
In homes across Britain, neighbour disputes are turning violent.
Call the police now!
And lives are being ruined.
It's almost like we're living life in a prison now.
By the nightmare next door. Tonight, two neighbours turn a peaceful street into a battleground.
There was something wrong, something had snapped in her head.
A driveway dispute leaves neighbours at war.
When they started barricading my door, my reaction is to hit back.
And in Bolton, small acts of kindness turn into big problems.
She didn't like it. She kicked off as though like she's a demon.
One man thought he'd moved to his dream London home. But when he got to know his neighbour,
There's something wrong with your brain, really.
he was pushed to the edge. After years looking for the perfect home, 46-year-old security guard Alan Hennigan finally moved into this first-floor flat in picturesque West Hampstead.
The facilities are brilliant around here. You've got everything like shopping centres, you've got all the transport as well. Hampstead Heath, brilliant to go over there and just have a walk.
It was the ideal place for Alan and his best friend to call home.
I've had my dog since he was a puppy. His name's Snoop Dogg. Snoop always loves his walks, don't matter how many times you take him out. Come on then, let's go. Snoop, walk.
A few days after moving in, Alan met the downstairs tenant, Anne Yates.
He came across okay. She'd say hello to me, or if my windows were open, she'd say hi or whatever. Don't know if she wanted more chat, but I'm not that kind of person that will chat my business, basically.
With the pair soon on nodding terms, Snoop made a different impression on the new neighbour.
I was on my way to work at the train station and my phone rang. And it was my housing officer saying that complaint had come in about my dog.
Alan was shocked. Downstairs neighbour Anne Yates had complained about Snoop howling and barking.
My dog isn't doing what this woman has constantly said that he is doing.
Anne Yates didn't want to appear on camera, but told us she is adamant Snoop was causing the nuisance.
I had to call the Noise Night Patrol team, who came to my house on many occasions and witnessed the dog barking.
Alan was totally baffled by Anne's complaints and completely convinced of his dog's innocence.
No way does he bark. Unless there was a cat out there doing its kind of all that kind of stuff, then he might give a bark.
But Anne was collecting evidence.
I recorded all the noise made by Mr. Hennigan's dog barking and bounding about during the night.
With both neighbours heading for conflict, the authorities stepped in. Alan couldn't believe where he ended up. In court.
And an undertaking was set by the judge whereby Mr. Hennigan was told to keep his dog under quiet control and to stop harassing me.
I had no choice but to sign a promise, basically, saying that I wouldn't allow my dog to bark and bound and run about.
Threatened with Snoop being taken from him, Alan struck back to prove their innocence and started collecting evidence by filming Snoop 24/7.
I've got 2 hours, 40 minutes on this SD card, so I will be downloading it on my hard drives at that time. I now have 10 hard drives that I've been recording for 2.5 years, so I've had to keep adding boxes basically after boxes.
Alan is convinced it shows Snoop isn't the noisy one.
I go through that footage when I come in to see what he's been like when I'm not in the house. He just lays there until I come in.
Believing Snoop wasn't guilty, Alan and his girlfriend Jackie Gilmore started tracking where the noise was coming from and began writing down every single sound they heard in the neighbourhood.
I just started doing logs like on books like this. They have started to build up. I log any kind of noise, like doors are slamming, dog barking, stuff like that basically.
For Alan and Jackie, it's almost become a full-time job.
1804 hearing Miss Yates' car pull up outside.
Normally I just put it down all rough. Whatever I've written down, she'll put in the proper logbook basically. It does like take over your life basically.
But things between the neighbours were soon to get physical.
She said, call the police, I've just been assaulted.
Coming up, in Wales, fruit starts a fight between neighbours.
I found the peaches had been deposited on my doorstep. So I got the message then.
And one pensioner's generosity angers her neighbours.
I'm not accepting so many presents. I have rules with my children.
Monmouth, deep in the Wye Valley. Formerly the subject of a border dispute between England and Wales, and home to one resident whose land dispute is proving much harder to settle.
I can quite lawfully walk round whichever way I need to access my doorway. And this has been denied to me ever since these people have been here. They've picked on him and basically they've been baiting a 70-year-old man.
Retired mechanic Wally Simpson has lived in his cottage a few miles from Monmouth for 45 years.
It's a very pleasant place to live. I love it here. The scenery here is absolutely stunning. Unspoilt, beautiful. It's so peaceful and tranquil here.
In 2014, recently single Wally met his new next-door neighbours, 60-year-old business consultant Chris Rhodes and his partner, Tarina St. Clair.
A lady came round with her partner and she said, I believe you repair things. And I said, I have been known to. And she said, would you want an old dishwasher with a fault? It's got some sort of fault on it. And I declined. I said, no thanks, I married one. In a rather facetious way. It was only a joke, but I feel it was taken rather badly. And it's been downhill ever since, really.
Chris and Tarina didn't want to be filmed, but told us they were warned about Wally by other neighbours, who said he'd had an issue with every family that ever lived next door.
When I first came here, it was a holiday cottage next door, and there wasn't any problem at all. But then it was sold, and I've had my fair share of bad neighbours, which wasn't my fault.
After a sticky start, Wally was keen to make a good impression on his new neighbours, and he saw an opportunity to help Tarina's farm animals.
The sheep had been kicking their water bucket round the field for the last couple of hours. I said to her, your sheep are out of water, and I was just preparing some water for them. And she didn't want me to do it. And I said, well, there's no bother. All I could do is hop over your gate and the job would be done. And she said, no. She said, it's Chris will go potty. It's my responsibility. So I said, okay. I wandered off. Left it at that.
But Tarina saw Wally's behaviour very differently.
She said that she thought you were drunk and you wandered onto her land. What would your response be to that?
Totally horrified and surprised. I wasn't drunk at all.
Undeterred, Wally tried to befriend his neighbours once more.
I'd gone to market and I'd bought peaches. They were at the right sort of price, and I bought a whole box full. And I thought, as a gesture of goodwill, why not take some round to the neighbours? Knocked on their back door and there was no reply. And the kitchen window was open, so I left them on the windowsill. And I came back round.
But the Rhodes claim that Wally actually walked into their home, leaving the fruit on the kitchen table.
And a little while later, I found the peaches had been deposited on my doorstep. So I got the message then.
The message was rammed home by what came next. A new CCTV camera facing the Rhodes driveway next to Wally's house.
I've never had this sort of thing before. You know, we live in a rural community. I'm here all the time. I keep an eye on things for people. We don't need cameras.
Chris Rhodes says it was installed as he thought Wally was trespassing on their driveway, a space which runs along the edge of Wally's house up to his side door. Wally doesn't believe he was trespassing.
It ought to be quite obvious to anybody that the door that I have at the side of my building, it's there to walk through. It's not there as an ornament. It was put there to be used.
And for Wally, it's not just common sense. He thinks his property deeds give him a right of way called an easement.
The easement which I enjoy includes all of this space, which I can walk around there anytime I wish, with workmen and other tools, with a bicycle, perambulator and a wheelbarrow, to access that doorway.
But with Chris Rhodes still believing Wally was trespassing, it wasn't long before both neighbours started to mark their territory.
The gravel was more or less level with my doorstep, and then I looked out of my window and the whole doorstep was covered with gravel like this. I came out here and I brushed it away. And the next thing I knew, there are all sorts of potted plants here. Not small ones, but quite large ones. All the way across the doorway. Nowhere else down there or here, just across the doorway. And this persisted for quite a time. Terry would come out here and water these pots of an evening, quite blatantly, knowing it would annoy me, and it was just done to be awkward.
But when a new boundary appears, Wally feels trapped.
This is put here to intimidate me. There's no other reason.
Come on, Snoop. Bed. He's a good boy.
In West Hampstead, London, after complaints about his dog barking from downstairs neighbour Anne Yates, Alan Hennigan felt forced to put his pet and home under surveillance.
The threat was that my dog could be rehomed. I've got to show that I'm innocent or my dog is innocent through cameras.
After a year of arguments, the neighbours' dispute would suddenly spill out onto their doorstep.
Alan was taking me back home. Miss Yates was around this point, and she actually said, now I've got to put up with your dog barking and bounding about. She actually pointed the finger in my face. It came to right about, I would say, about there. So I didn't actually know what she was going to do at that point, so I kind of acted in self-defence and kind of just slightly pushed it out the way. And she said, call the police, I've just been assaulted.
She was saying the finger was all bruised, and she just makes things so it sounds worse.
But Anne Yates told us the police took her allegations seriously.
She was taken away for questioning, admitting to the assault on me and given a caution.
All Jackie did, you've got a finger in your face, all she's gone is like that, to move it out of the way.
I do all the cooking. Have you cooked for me yet?
I don't think so.
Trying to put the incident behind them, Alan and Jackie's relationship grew stronger. But Jackie would find it impossible to avoid their neighbour.
Well, as I came out of the front door and I saw that Miss Yates was actually right about here and she was staring at me, but I was trying not to kind of look at her. I just thought, just carry on walking, don't say nothing, don't do nothing. And she said, "You'll never win." And that kind of got to me because I couldn't understand why she would say something like that. I actually called her a name and she said, "What did you say?" And then I kind of just carried on walking. And she actually had me by the back of my hair and she kind of pulled me down.
Alan had only just set off for a walk with Snoop.
I heard this kind of screech or whatever it was that Jackie let out. I've turned round and by then I've seen Jackie on the floor.
And she said to me, this is what she always wanted.
I'm telling her to kind of get off. She wouldn't get off.
Jackie was in tears. She'd just been pulled down from behind by, well, a so-called grown woman.
Anne Yates saw the incident in a completely different light.
I called the police, and when they arrived, Mr. Hennigan lied, saying I had attacked Miss Gilmore. There was no evidence and no witness, so the police advised them not to try and press charges, as it was my word against theirs.
Jackie said, well, no, don't want to, we'll just drop it, basically.
They were now determined never to miss an opportunity to gather evidence against their neighbour.
In here I've got my phone camera. I've also got these pen cameras as well.
Alan and Jackie turned the cameras from themselves to the surrounding neighbourhood.
So now I'll record when I'm walking my dog. No one should have to live like this.
And it wasn't long before the streets became a battleground.
Can you go, please? Alan, just call the police.
Carl Mills and his partner Karen Price were looking forward to their new life in this 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of Bolton with their 4 children, Stephen, Daniel, Ryan and Katie.
One of my friends said it's a lovely street to live in and you really are lucky to get into this street because it's so quiet and it's so friendly.
Had nice play areas for the kids. All these neighbours all around here, very, very nice.
And not long after moving in, they met their next-door neighbour, 75-year-old homeowner Marjorie.
First time I met Marjorie, I thought, yeah, seems all right, very nice.
She's a very, very, very friendly old lady.
And Marjorie seemed keen to help the family settle in.
It sounds silly what I'm going to say to you now. And she decided off her own back, we didn't ask her or anything like that, that she wanted to make my children's tea on a Saturday. I said, yeah, you can do, thinking it was this one-off.
But one Saturday soon became many Saturdays.
After a bit, I thought, well, this isn't right. We're a family. It's summertime. We want to take my children to the park. We want to be out all day on a Saturday. I don't want to come home. She actually phones up. Your tea's ready. And she said it quite, I can explain it, quite, as if she was angry. I'm sorry, I says, but we've been out. She said, it's gone cold now. It's gone cold now.
For the Mills, Marjorie was getting too personal.
It's just questions that you just won't ask anybody. What wages are you on, or the holidays, and, prying into like your financial side of it.
Feeling their neighbour was becoming intrusive, the Mills tried to distance themselves from her and were looking forward to a family Christmas when they heard a knock at the door.
I didn't know who it was, so I came to answer it. Stood there, it was Marjorie. She had 2 sacks of big presents. I goes, oh no. I was serious? And she was, yeah, she was, hide him quick before the kids see him. So obviously I just come straight in, and then she toddled off on her way before I even had the chance to say thank you.
But the gifts were viewed very differently by Karen.
There must have been at least 10 presents in each of these big bags. And then I turned around and I said to Carl, excuse me, I'm not accepting so many presents for Ryan and Katie off a neighbour next door. One is enough. I have rules with my children. We were happy with it, and Carl wasn't happy with it. And I said, I'm sorry, Carl, I want them presents back around the house.
The presents were returned to Marjorie, but she came back with them.
Basically threw the presents into the door. And then she said, oh, just take one out. And I said, well, actually, no. I said, why don't you give them to a charity shop? And she totally said, no, I'm not going to do that. I may as well throw them in the bin.
With the neighbours' relationship ruined, things turned nasty.
Ryan came storming through that door, very, very upset. Marjorie next door shouting at me mummy and upsetting me.
Coming up, the peace of the Welsh countryside is shattered as 2 neighbours battle over boundaries.
He says, I don't want any more cut off that hedge. You can leave it alone right now. Right?
And in London, a bin war pushes one woman to breaking point.
She's grabbed the handle and bashed me on my leg.
In a Monmouthshire hamlet, Wally Simpson believed he had a long-standing right to walk along his neighbour's driveway, which led to his own side door.
I may pass and repass to maintain my building and to gain access to my building.
But when he found gravel and then plant pots on the doorstep, Wally began to feel neighbours Chris Rhodes and his partner Tarina didn't understand his rights.
And then to emphasise their want for me not to come out of the doorway, they parked their vehicle here as well. It was done as a means of intimidation, totally unwarranted. They decided they'd barricade my door up.
But a quick check of his deeds, and Wally was adamant he was in the right.
The problem is that it hasn't been documented on my neighbour's deeds. But it's not really my problem, is it?
Chris Rhodes' solicitor soon discovered that Wally did have the right of way, called an easement, which should have been in the Rhodes' deeds too.
When the easement was accepted, you could tell that they didn't want the easement to exist any longer.
Chris Rhodes told us that once he was aware of the easement, he acknowledged Wally's rights in full and came up with his own solution.
They wanted to sell me a piece of land about so wide for £1, which ran down the side of my wall, down here, but narrowing at the gateway. One of the conditions was that they're going to put a 7-foot-high fence, which would block my light, block my view. I declined the offer because I can use this land whenever I want. I don't need to own it.
But Wally soon found another problem at the back of his home, which borders the Rhodes garden.
I came home from the boot fair on Sunday morning. And lo and behold, there was a trench being dug all the way down to the rear of my property.
The Rhodes were building a new barrier.
They had contractors in to put posts and fencing.
The fence has left Wally feeling trapped.
I used to be able to open this window wide, but I can't anymore. Look how close this fence is. I mean, it is inches away from my window. I'd have a job getting out of there if there was a fire.
But Chris Rhodes told us they had a good reason for erecting the fence.
Your neighbours have said that they put up the fence because they planned to get horses, and they'd heard that...
Is that right?
A horse had damaged your property before.
Is that right? That's the first I've heard of that. That they're getting horses. Horses don't have fences as high as this. This is more for ostriches or deer or something. I mean, come on. You see the rest of the paddock has fences round it, but nowhere near as high as this. This is put here to intimidate me. There's no other reason.
Wally's friend of over 30 years, Lyndon Benson, became concerned by the turn of events.
He's lived here for 40 years. Why should he be driven out of his home by the likes of this sort of thing? It's gone too far. I mean, it's one thing after another. First the pots, now the fence across the window. What next?
Boxed in from all sides, Wally decided to return to an old hobby of beekeeping on a patch of land he was looking after for a friend.
I've had hives on this land for quite a number of years. In return, I maintained the land, which was pretty overgrown and neglected.
And while tending to the field's hedge, which borders the road's land, Terina appeared.
Travelling down the hedgerow at about walking pace. She comes over, she says, "You can leave that alone. I don't want any more cut off that hedge. You can leave it alone right now." Right? In that way.
The Rhodes family said they felt Wally was decimating the hedge and should have got their permission as it was a shared boundary. They contacted the landowner, who then instructed Wally to stop looking after their land.
Why would they want me to stop maintaining the field? I'd done it for years and years and years. Well, fine, I won't maintain it again.
Wally's caravan, which he'd been keeping on the field, was also an issue for Terina.
He said, "And you can move that eyesore too." I said, "Excuse me, I've had permission to put this caravan here." She said, "We'll see about that."
Wally decided to move the caravan closer to his property.
I summoned a friend and we towed it up over the bank. And as soon as we detached it, my neighbours were there photographing me.
Wally's caravan now had a view directly towards where the Rhodes were living. And it appeared Chris and Terina weren't happy about it.
I heard a knock at the door. The police were there. They alleged that I'd harassed her next door, I'd sworn at her and upset her, which is total lies. And I said, "They're going to move their fence." And he assured me that if I moved the caravan out of the way and there wasn't any animosity, then the fence would go.
Wally finally moved the caravan, but the fence remained.
So my intention is now, as there's been no concession made, to move the caravan back where I had it before.
In West Hampstead, London, complaints about Alan Hennigan's barking dog has led to altercations between his girlfriend Jackie Gilmore and downstairs neighbour Anne Yates. Feeling victimised, the couple began filming everything they saw, paying close attention to their neighbour's new dog.
She spent so many years complaining about Snoop. All of a sudden, she's gone and got herself a dog, and she's actually encouraged it as well as allowed it to bark.
My dog has been well trained and is well behaved. Mr. Hennigan and Jackie Gilmore would spend time tormenting my dog from their kitchen window whenever they knew my dog was in my garden. They would make noises to try and make him bark and then video it.
With neighbours and their pets clashing, both sides attended mediation, where they agreed to walk their dogs at different times. But they felt Anne wasn't sticking to her part of the deal.
Can you go, please?
Don't! Just go inside, man. Just go inside. There's something wrong with your brain, really. She says, "Oh, he's got an aggressive dog." She knows I take my dog out regular at this time. She's just such a...
After 2 years of hostility, Alan became concerned about a new problem at the front of the property.
When I first moved in, the bins were along here. One day then, came home and they were all lined up along the walkway.
The council informed Alan that Anne Yates had the right to move the bins and park a motorbike in the bay instead. But still believing he was in the right, Alan moved them back, and as ever, they filmed it.
Mr. Hennigan was told not to keep putting his wheelies in the area in front of my lounge window, regardless whether the bike was there or not. But he carried on doing so.
One day, Miss Yates came out of her flat, basically, up the stairs like she does. And she just tossed it over the fence, basically. Or a little dog could have been coming down. Child on a scooter or anything can just hit the child or hurt the dog. And this woman says she's a dog lover.
Can I speak to Richard?
Call the police, call the police. I'm not.
As the bin area became a war zone, Jackie continued to film.
It's a bin area.
It's not.
She's basically come up around about here. She's grabbed the handle of the wheelie bin. He's come back and bashed me on my leg.
I did not bash Mr. Hennigan with a bin. Had I done so, he would have had me charged with assault.
Alan, just call the police.
She also had a stick waving it at me. She was really kind of aggressive, really. And looking at her, you thought there was something wrong. Something had snapped in her head or something.
As for waving my stick, would that be the same stick I have to use because I'm disabled? I was the one who called the police. When they arrived to speak to them about their threatening behaviour towards me, Mr. Hennigan did not mention me waving my stick to the police. Why not? If it was supposed to have happened.
She went to hit me with that stick, you know.
Did she?
Yeah, and then she buffed me with the wheelie bin on my leg.
With tensions rising, Alan thinks that he's winning the battle.
It makes me feel better because I know it's getting to her.
In Bolton, the Mills felt their neighbour Marjorie was getting too close for comfort.
I felt like she was ruling this family, like, you know.
And when Marjorie tried to give 2 sacks full of presents to their young children, Ryan and Katie, at Christmas, it was a step too far for Karen.
Unacceptable for a neighbour to get my children all them toys, and obviously we decided to just take them back.
She was just too nice to be kind, if you know what I mean.
And with relations now strained, Marjorie's involvement in their family would cross a boundary for Karen.
I was in here doing the washing up. I could actually hear Ryan and Katie playing together in the back garden. Suddenly I heard the back door open. Ryan came storming through that door, very, very upset. Marjorie next door shouting at me mummy and upsetting me, and she doesn't know, she's just hurting my ears. She's shouting at Ryan, "Ryan, get off her now. Don't do that to Katie. It's my son, it's me to shout at Ryan, not a next door neighbour."
It was the final straw. The Mills wanted more privacy and had a fence built around their garden.
Bang, once this fence went up, she didn't like it one bit, and she kicked off from someone so nice like that, just turned in a few seconds like as though like she's a demon, so I couldn't believe it, honestly.
The housing association became involved. But to the Mills' surprise, they were the ones being accused of threatening and abusive behaviour.
As a family, we are quiet, we don't bother anyone. I feel we're being housed off the neighbours because they've only got Margie's side of the story.
The couple were told that if the situation didn't improve, they could lose their home, or even face jail.
We put everything into this house, and these allegations that you just can't live with this certain situation over your head.
Wanting to prove they weren't the problem, the Mills installed CCTV at the front of their home. And it didn't take long for the camera to capture a confrontation.
Marjorie decided to pop herself out, get the hose pipe out with a brush, and then she start cleaning all the patio at the front here, and then decided to start making all the mud. Instead of going that way to the grid down there, she decided to go down to this grid here, which is just parked behind the back of this car here. And she decided to start sweeping it all over the front, all over there. I realised another neighbour at that time had a big van and he wanted to get out, so I decided to help him out by getting into my car and moving it backwards, and I just carried on doing the garden. So she's got the brush, she's here like this, the car's parked here, and she's brushing away like that, brushing it, splashing it all up, and then she got that close, she got right down under this car and she's hitting my car with the brush on purpose, waiting for a reaction from us, obviously. So I got my brush, I come back here, I thought I'd give her some of her own back, and I said, there you go, have some of your own back. She's brushing this way, I'm brushing that way. Looking at each other like that. She was just actually determined that she's just not having it at all whatsoever, and then she just carried on doing it, so I just left her to it and then just walked away.
Marjorie declined to take part in this programme, and with relations between her and the Mills at an all-time low, Karen and Carl have had enough.
We made the decision to terminate her tenancy and just move away from it and just go, because the situation's not going to change. It's not going to get any further, any better.
We feel very, very hungry indeed, because we feel, and definitely, we are the victims of it all.
Still to come. In London, one couple struggle to cope with noise problems.
Because of the water feature, I'm having to sleep in my front room.
And one man's behaviour leaves his neighbours reeling.
They've said that you hide in the hedges, scaring women.
This is laughable.
In London's West Hampstead, the peace is shattered as Alan Hennigan watches downstairs neighbour Anne Yates hurl his bin into the road.
And then I will put them back out again, won't I?
Might do some good with your weight. I'm moving in soon, remember?
Having faced 4 years of complaints about them, Anne and his girlfriend Jackie Gilmore found that every little thing Anne did would start to annoy them.
All you're hearing while she's opening, yawning is... And it's just funny that it's called the yawning because it's woken me up and everything. So you probably do yawn all through the day because it wakes you up.
But the awning wasn't the only thing interrupting Alan's sleep.
Because of the water feature in the garden, I'm actually having to sleep in my front room, as you can see on the mattresses and that here.
Alan complained to the council and they investigated the noise.
Camden agreed that the fountain does not emit noise to be a problem, so I run it between 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. without it causing any nuisance to my neighbours.
Anne felt there was another reason behind Alan's complaints.
Mr. Hennigan has been trying to force me out of my home of 15 years since he moved in. He has this idea that if I move out, he will be allocated my flat, which has a beautiful garden.
I'd love to have access to it, and I do believe, in my opinion, that it's communal.
Mr. Hennigan has tried unsuccessfully to get access to my garden for his use, but Camden has told him he has no right to it.
Me and Alan actually have gone around some garden shops and just imagined what it would be like. What it would be like to have our own kind of deck chairs and pot plants and kind of flower type things.
With the neighbours at stalemate, Alan has to walk on eggshells when he and Anne cross paths.
Pigs are coming out of my
And for the moment, the quarrel rumbles on. Who will blink first?
She just stared at me as she drove down, like you'd think she should be looking straight ahead, but she looked straight at me as she was driving there. You'd kind of just...
4 years since the war broke out, and Alan seems no nearer to making peace.
It makes me feel better because I know it's getting to her. I know it is.
In Wales, having accepted that their neighbour Wally Simpson had a right to use their driveway, Chris Rhodes and partner Tarina had put a fence around the rest of their boundary.
I don't enjoy my view anymore. The hedge, the fence, the trees, it's there to intimidate me and annoy me for as long as they want.
And after a recent disagreement over where Wally keeps his caravan, the dispute was about to get incredibly personal.
I came out here and noticed Tarina lingering outside in the lane. And she said to me, "Are you going to move that caravan?" And I said, "Are you going to move your fence?" She said, "I'm not removing the fence." I said, "I'm not removing the caravan." So then she started to get abusive. So I wandered through here and confronted her and said, "My God, you're ugly." And basically that was the end of the conversation. And I haven't spoken to her since.
Another local resident contacted us anonymously, claiming Wally is a troublemaker who uses the right-of-way to torment his neighbours. They claim he bullies female neighbours and makes out he's the victim.
They've said you don't like women and you hide in hedges scaring women.
Say that again. This is laughable. Whoever made this allegation is bonkers.
Tarina claims that she feels threatened and harassed by Wally, and that he swears at her and makes rude gestures, something he denies. Despite all of the problems he's had with next door, Wally remains positive.
Even though I've had all this persecution, it's better to smile in the face of adversity, I find, and get upset. So when I get up in the morning, I see my smiling face.
With his view of the countryside ruined, Wally came up with an alternative plan.
I was starting to paint the roof, and while taking a break, I had a sit up there, and I thought, how wonderful is this? It's a wonderful view. It's a wonderful place to sit. You could see the garden in a different perspective altogether. I could admire my neighbour's building as it's progressing. I used to have this wonderful view out of my windows until my neighbour decided to put a fence in front of my window. I mean, come summertime, I could put table and chairs up there, couldn't I? Certainly strong enough to sit up there and have a roof garden. Bit of astroturf, maybe.
Have you got a nightmare neighbour story? Get in touch at channel5.com/nightmare neighbour. Next time, two neighbouring families go to war.
My face was clawed to pieces.
Noise from next door gets too much for one woman.
She's gone crazy, crazy, crazy.
And in Dover, battles over a fence turn nasty.
It's as though somebody just kicked me in the guts.
And make sure you're here for the new series of Nightmare Neighbour Next Door, Thursday night at 9. In a moment, we've the latest 5 news headlines and weather. Stay with us.